So when I saw the topic of this conference being challenges in the deployment of OR project, I was really happy to see that because it's really a topic that's near to my heart. I don't have an OR background myself. I'm originally a physicist, but I really enjoy the combination of both building the software and also implementing it, and especially the issue of trust is an interesting one for me there. So I'll discuss that later in the presentation as well. So far the talks in this conference have been really interesting. I think I heard a lot of things that were very recognizable for me, and I hope that a lot of the things that I mentioned will also be recognizable for other people. And hopefully I can also add some new insights and ideas on how you might meet these challenges. So for this presentation, I've chosen a typical ORTEC project. We started it back in 2018 and finished it recently, but many things are similar to other projects that we've done as well. So yeah, this is just a quick agenda. So I'll discuss the planning problem itself, the solution that we worked on, and then of course the main topic will be overcoming challenges. So before doing that, just a quick introduction to ORTEC for those of you that don't know it. So ORTEC is a Dutch company. It was started almost 40 years ago now by a couple of operations research students, basically from their attic, and it's now grown into one of the leading suppliers of mathematical optimization software. Customers include now large companies like Shell and Coca-Cola, but for example also many hospitals in the Netherlands and also outside of the Netherlands. Yeah, you can see some numbers here. So right now we're I think over 1,000 employees. Most of them are located in the Netherlands, but we also have quite some offices basically all over the world. The purpose of ORTEC is to improve the world using our passion for mathematics. So we really want to contribute to a better world by empowering organizations with mathematical optimization technology and also advanced analytics. And we do that in two ways. So we have a division that's basically implementing a number of standard software products, and then also the consulting department, which I'm part of, and that also includes custom-built software solutions. So I want to discuss now an example of that. So the planning problem that we are dealing with in this case, our customer was the customer service department of an international manufacturing company. I won't name any names to be able to speak more freely. But basically what this company does is it produces highly complicated machines. And among other things, the customer service department also organizes the installations of these machines at the site of the customer, and also does certain upgrades of these machines. Also, for example, relocations, and at some point also deinstallations. And these projects that are being planned, they're quite long, so weeks or months. They can contain up to 50 people, all specialized employees with different combinations of skills to perform specific jobs. And both the customers and the employees are located all over the world. So actually taking into account the intercontinental travel was a big part of the problem as well. And what we do here is a day level planning up to shift levels. So really also planning who is doing the late shifts, early shifts, etc. It's usually the real planning is approximately 3 months ahead. So that we're really allocating people to jobs, and this also being communicated to them. However, the planning is also done further ahead to be able to spot capacity issues and opportunities as well. So for example, opportunities for retraining, or in which region do you need to hire more people, things like that. And of course, there are, as always, many constraints on skill levels, but also travel, taking into account the work-life balance, that people are not away from home too much, that also the workload is spread evenly. So that's a quick summary of the problem. Well, as we see at many customers, the previous solution that they were using was Excel. So here you can see a screenshot of their planning file, which was really the master file that the planners were working with, just containing, well, very colorful Gantt chart showing what everyone was doing on each day. And of course, Excel is a great tool, but they were definitely running into its limitations. Like working concurrently was almost impossible. If they had to do some kind of scenario analysis, moving some upgrades back or adding some other projects to see if this was possible, this took a long time. It was very error prone. And also there were no data integrity checks. So yeah, when they contacted us, they were really in need of something else. So the solution that we built for them was built in Ames. You see a small screenshot here. And it actually has two parts, which are, in my opinion, are both very important. So the first is that it also supports the manual planning in many ways. For example, by having a so-called planning assistant where you can filter and rank the employees by certain constraints to see which one fits your project best, instead of well, just picking the first one you see available or having it in your head. And also, of course, doing checks on the data to see if people are not too long away from home or have simultaneous jobs. But it also adds automated planning. So we don't use a mathematical model for this, but we use a grasp heuristic, so basically a greedy heuristic, which prioritizes the jobs, and then starting at the highest priority, selects the employees which match the hard constraints, order them using a number of soft constraints, and then simply selecting the best one. Of course, we also support some easy scenario creation and comparison of that. And very important for the customer as well is that we support concurrent planning. So multiple people can be in the tool at the same time, and changes to the data are pushed to the others immediately, so that you know that you're always working in the same data. So what were the challenges that we ran into? Well, I think the first one is definitely very recognizable for anyone implementing operations research anywhere, probably. So what, which is to well, get the users to actually trust the algorithm to make good decisions for them. And one point that I believe is really important in the way that we did the project is that we first built a lot of the manual planning options, and only after that we started to implement the algorithm. And the reason why this is important is, of course, that it really helps you to find out what kind of things are important, so what kind of constraints are there, what do the planners actually use when they are making their planning. And also, if you can show, for example, that you have data checks which actually highlight all the cases where there are issues, or that you have one of these, like the planning assistant that I was talking about earlier, where you really just have a list of all the people that could do the job and rank them, for example, based on utilization. Then if this is correct, if this really gives the planners the result that they would expect, and it also helps them to trust the algorithm later on, because we reuse a lot of the code for that, and we use the same kind of constraints for that. And also doing it in this way, we also found out a lot of kind of the hidden constraints that people had in their head, and that you only find out if you really start trying it out. in this way. And also another reason why the manual planning is important, in my opinion, is that manual overrides will pretty much, I think, always remain necessary, because you can never get all the information that is in the heads of the planners and put that into business rules or into an algorithm. For example, the planners know who the people are that don't like working together. This is probably not something you would even want to encompass in some kind of input file. Another topic that was very important for the customer was so-called conscious decision making. So for them, it was important that the algorithm would not automatically make any changes in the main planning, in their master plan, so to say, but that they that these would be saved in a what we call the plan variant first, so that they could review it and also decide on a case-by-case case whether they wanted to have this in their master plan as well. So it was very important for them to always stay in control of what was happening. Also, what we found that definitely in this case, the result that the heuristic gives you is really good enough. Of course, you can get some improvement by going to an exact model, but it's not. It's something that we as developers really like, but often for customers it's really not necessary. They just want a result that is good enough and that they can get quickly. And another good point about the heuristic is, of course, that it's less of a black box, so you can actually trace back what is happening, and if there's any questions, explain that also to them. So for that, really taking the time for this kind of support, so answering any questions that they might have, and also checking results if they did not understand a certain allocation, for example. This really helped also in gaining trust for the algorithm. And finally, we also had a rescheduling mode, which was really used for the near future, because also there you don't necessarily want to have the best solution, but you also want to take into account that you don't want to make too many changes to the planning that people have already received, because of course for the employees it's also important to know where they are going and when, and not have that changed at the last minute unless it's absolutely necessary, of course. So second challenge, probably also very recognizable, is to get people to really throw away the Excel files that they've been using so far. So for that, we really had to get very close to the planners and really understand what do they need, what makes their life easier, and gain their trust in that way. And for that, it of course helps to have very quick feedback loops. I'm also a big fan of running agile projects, so you can quickly react to anything that any feedback that you get from your users. So in the end, we've implemented a lot of options, manual options that make their life easier, that automate things that would take a lot of time by hand. So for example, if a job, especially a job that they need to travel for, is allocated to an employee, then there is kind of a standard sequence of jobs that go with it. So there's some time for administration, then you travel, then you have to rest, then there is some kind of badging, or nowadays, of course, quarantine to deal with. Then you have the actual job, and then again, all that. And of course, you want to take that, you want to be able to automate that as well. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on as well. We also found that there are definitely some pitfalls there, because if you want to implement many of these things, then at some point you also have a lot of options in your project that make the application harder to learn for users. So here you can see, for example, that we have a lot of, if you do a right mouse click, then you get a lot of options. And of course, people need to actually understand what all of them do. So that's a difficult balance sometimes to take. And another thing that we found that really helps, might not help in every case though, was to basically make it easy for them to go back. So what we did was that the output from or the planning from our application is still exported to Excel in the same format that they used before, also because they were used to this. But it also gave them the confidence to really actually switch to our application much sooner than we expected, because basically what they said is we can always go back. If there's some issues, we can just take the latest Excel export and start planning in that again. Of course, that never happened, or luckily that never happened, because they soon found out that it was much easier and much faster and much better to work in the new application. And also here it's really important to be available in person as much as possible. So it was sometimes quite hard because, for example, we also had planners in Asia, and we found that it was quite hard to really find out whether they had already thrown away their Excels or what kind of issues they were having. So in the end, part of the project team actually went to Asia for a week or so to really sit next to these people and talk to them about what was still keeping them from starting to use the application. And of course, there also, in the end, was really important to have the buy-in from management to convince them. And then a very related challenge is to actually make sure that people do not go back to Excel. Because if you're not really on top of what's happening, of course the business changes, people change, and it's very easy to find out at some point that, it happens sometimes that you find out at some point that people are still calculating something in some kind of Excel in the background, because that was easier than figuring out the right way to do it in the application. So for that, we see it as really important to not just deliver the application and then say goodbye, but to really also play a role in maintenance and support afterwards. And really important to stay in contact and be available on site. Of course, at the moment that's really difficult because everyone is working from home. So what we try to do now is to have some kind of walk-in online support meetings where we are available in a Microsoft Teams meeting and they can just log in and ask small questions. And we found that at least really helps. But we're also very much looking forward to, well, some point in the future when we can go back to actually being on site, sitting next to people, hearing what they are talking about, what issues they're having. And as I said before, scenario creation is also important for that. And also important thing to realize, especially for the users, is that before the application actually starts saving them time, it will cost them a lot of time to really be involved in requirement definition, in testing, in figuring out how should they be using this application. So for that, it's important to manage expectations and make people realize that. To have a dedicated project team with also people from the customer involved who are really dedicated to work on this for a bit. And again, of course, you need the buy-in from management there. And what we also found that helped is that we did officially it was called a proof of concept, but in the end it was really used by them for operational planning as well. But we started out with one department who was enthusiastic about the idea and who was open to change, and basically delivered the application first for them, and then they could be or advocates or representatives to show their colleagues that this was in the end really saving them time. So that helped to get also the buy-in from the other people. And then a final kind of challenge is what we see often as well, is that not everyone is happy with having more clarity and standardization. So if you have a clear overview like this, then it's actually very clear which people still have some time and whether everyone is fully booked or not. While in the past we saw that local planners, if everyone had their own separate Excel, it was much easier for them to say, but we're too busy, we can't help out any other departments. So yeah, this took for them some getting used to this as well. But in the end, I think it was balanced out by also saving them a lot of time. But sometimes you also need to accept that you cannot make everybody happy. So what did we get in the end? We now have the application is currently, the project is finished. The application is now used to plan, I think, approximately 1,300 employees by now. And we see that the planners are really happy with it in general. So answering questions from management, like can we move these installations in time, is much. Before it could take up to a day to answer this because you had to update the whole planning manually. And now this can be answered in just 30 minutes or so by creating a scenario and re-optimizing there. This also means that the planners can focus on more interesting things than just updating the Excels. They found that it's much easier to work together, to have different departments doing different types of projects, working together, and getting closer to merging because they're now all using the same application, the same input data, the same type of output data. So it really brings them closer together as well. And also it makes it easier for them to deal with crisis situations, like also for them, COVID had a large effect. Especially with all the changes about countries being closed and different quarantine periods, they could easily deal with that. At the moment, not every department is using the algorithm yet, because this is definitely something that takes some time for them to learn and to really set all the settings in a way that they can, that they get out the kind of results that they are happy with. But they're starting to use it more and more now that they're used to the main tool. And we have some further extensions planned for the future. So that's also happy to hear that. And then I think my main 3 takeaways from this project would be that building trust is really the most important challenge, because if your users do not trust your applications, they will not use it. They will always find ways around it. And that's just, a waste of all the time and energy put into it. And I really believe that it's something that can help them. So I want to convince them of that as well. For that, communication and building up relations is key. You can do that anonymously, so to say. And happy users are always your best advocates if you try to convince other people to use the application as well. So that's it. Thank you very much.